Yeah, um, doing well here in Vermont. How are you?
I'm all right. Vermont. Are you originally from Vermont?
No, I'm from the Chicagoland area.
Oh,
Something that we have in common.
I'm trying. What's the major city in Vermont?
Burlington.
I don't know if I've ever been to Vermont.
Well, you should come visit, man.
I'm trying to think. I mean, the only time that I was traveling around the States was Sonic Tour, so I
Yeah,
probably don't remember because that just becomes a blur, that kind of life. So,
yeah,
but I don't, it's possible I never made it to Vermont.
yeah. That's true. I mean, the thing about Burlington, it's the biggest city in Vermont, and it's small, and there's not
Oh,
even like that large of a music venue here. So a lot of
wow.
bands just like skip it, because
Yeah.
there's nowhere to play. But um,
Do
so
if large, like sort of large type music, do you have to go to Maine to see them?
from here, it's Montreal is the
Oh, that's even
closest.
closer. Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
wow.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So we're like an hour and a half from Montreal, with the
Oh,
and then a little
and
border.
that's
So
a pain going across the border.
yeah, if you live in Vermont, it's usually a little bit easier, but generally it can be, you know, not that much fun. But
Yeah.
uh,
I never had a good experience going between Canada and America. Every
yeah,
single time it's a pain.
yeah, I feel like they give you a harder time when you're coming back into the United
Yes.
States.
Yes,
You
it's
know,
yes.
they're
Back,
like
yeah.
they're trying to be hard asses or something, and like, you know,
Mad
catch
hell.
catch you on something. What do you got in there? Um,
Yes.
but yeah, what time is it there? Like 10 in the morning,
It's
11,
yeah, it's 10 in the morning here.
10 in the morning. Okay, cool. Well, thanks for chatting with me, man. I appreciate it. I know we've emailed a little bit over the years, and
So have we ever
nice to
met?
connect. Well, we have probably before I met you briefly in Chicago, like many years ago. And that's
Well, that,
actually it was funny. It's there's like some I had some like Chicago stuff that I wanted to chat with you about. But the I met you in man, it was probably so I went to DePaul University as
oh,
well, but after you did, um, I was there from 94 to 99.
oh, much later. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you were there like until
80
90 or
until 90,
yeah,
87 to
that's
90.
what I thought. Yeah, so I was like 4 years after you left or whatever.
Who
But
was Dean when you were there? Do you remember?
at the music school,
Yeah. Did you sorry, I assume, did you go to the music school or something
yeah,
else?
yeah, I was in the music school.
I'm sorry.
Um, it was yeah, it's okay, man. I made it. um, the head of the music department was, I think it was still George Flynn, right? Is that who you?
George Flynn.
Yes.
I've
Yeah,
got hundreds of stories about George Flynn.
yeah. Um, yeah, so like anyway, so I think I met you briefly probably in 97, 98, like at Lounge Acts or something.
Lounge acts.
You
Okay.
were you were DJing. Uh
Okay.
Sam Prekop was playing and you were like DJing and playing records and I went up to you and just, started talking to you about records and stuff. So we met briefly then, but I was just like a college student, having fun in Chicago and making
Oh,
music
that's
and going to shows.
probably around the time Sam recorded his solo record.
Yeah, it had to be because he
Solo
was
record.
he was playing those songs. He was playing solo shows, just guitar, and he had like his little
Wow.
sampler, box with him. Sometimes he'd play that, and yeah, I went to a few of those. I remember,
Oh, wow.
but I
That's
don't. Oh, he's a sweetheart. He came out here a few months back and played a show in
oh,
Burlington, and then me and Sam went and played a few other shows like in New England together, and um,
he's
he's great.
heavy in the Eurorack now, isn't he?
Yeah, he's full on into the Eurorack stuff. So which is cool. His music really, I don't know, his sensibility translates to it well, you know?
Oh,
Yeah.
I've been meaning. I really, it's horrible. I really don't listen to music anymore. So, I've been meaning to check his stuff out, and that's probably 5 years worth of stuff at this point.
Yeah, he's put out quite a few modular records at this point, just all
Oh,
modular stuff. But it's
I
very,
know he did one with John, but I
yeah,
haven't heard that yet either.
yeah. They did one last year, or the year before, which is really nice. It's a little more like rhythmic, as you would
Oh,
expect with John involved. But um, so yeah, it was like Lounge Acts, late '90s. But I don't know if we ever met after that, or
I was wondering if you ever came to Japan. I had a small memory of you.
I did, but I don't know if you were there yet.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think it was like, were you playing at Super Deluxe? Maybe.
Yeah, I played it.
I think I remember Mike asking me if I could play, and I couldn't. That's
Okay.
probably the best I have. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I played in Japan, I think 4 different times, but the last time I was there was I think 2010 or 2009, so it was a while
Oh,
ago.
okay. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And
Which
you
Super Deluxe is gone now. Well, I mean,
oh, it is.
it's in Chiba, but I mean, in terms of Tokyo,
Yeah.
it's all over.
Are there not like places to play
Not
music in
really.
Tokyo like that anymore? Oh, that's
The problem is, and this was before, even before the pandemic.
yeah.
I mean, with Super Deluxe closing, what basically happened was it left a vacuum. And so what you have then, and still now, you have places that you can do anything at, but at most you can have 50 people in there at a
Right,
time.
right.
And then the next step up from that is a club that won't do anything unless they get at least 300 people.
Oh, okay.
That whole area Super Deluxe was covering, like, okay, tonight will be 100 people, tomorrow will be 250. There's
Yeah,
no
that
place that mantle or whatever the word is up for it.
yeah, that
And
middle
it's
ground.
been like that pretty much since I moved.
Huh. And you've been there since when? 2012, 2015?
2016. I
Okay.
mean, so actually living. I mean, I
Yeah.
think it was here for a year before that,
Hmm.
studying Japanese and getting my visa together.
Right, right.
And then I was in Tokyo until about 7 or 8 years ago,
Okay. Hmm.
and
And
then moved out to mountains
right, right. Nice.
out because I could see what was, the Olympics were coming, all sorts of things.
Right, right.
It was time to get out.
Time to get out of the city a little bit. Yeah, that's basically. I mean, I've been in Burlington for like 20 years, and that I was in Boston and Chicago before that, and then just I was like, I
Yeah,
need
see,
to get out of the city. So
I always thought you were from Boston. I think.
I was maybe I did a lot of stuff with Keith Whitman when I was in
Right.
Boston, so maybe that's how the association, because he was there forever. We toured like crazy in like the
Where
early
is Keith
2000s.
now? Is
What's
Keith
that?
back in Boston? Is Keith back in Boston now?
No, he moved to Australia for a while, and now he's in New York
Oh,
City.
oh, now he's in New York. Yeah, well, I
Yeah.
knew he went to Australia, but I thought he went
Hmm.
back to Boston. Oh,
No,
New York.
he's been in New York City for a while now. So,
God,
and he
that's got
has a
expensive.
little boy too. So he's got a
Yeah.
kid.
God, that's got to be expensive now.
Oh man, yeah, I can't imagine. So, yeah, I wanted to. Where did you grow up in Illinois?
In Chicago,
Oh, in
there,
Chicago. Okay.
yeah, there's this. I mean, if you look at a map, I lived out by not that far from O'Hare,
Yeah, yeah.
but still Chicago because there's like basically like there's the main Chicago, and then there's a weird sort of strip of
Right.
Chicago, basically probably following one of the train lines,
Yeah.
and then another big round circle, which is where O'Hare is,
Right.
and um, it's like surrounded. It was surrounded by suburbs where I lived. I
Right.
lived in Chicago, but if I walked 2 blocks that way, I was in Elmwood Park. If I
Right.
walked 2 blocks that way, I was in Norwich.
Right.
So
And the suburbs just like that go on for
Yeah, and then
hours and
after that
hours.
you get on the 90 and you're going to
Yeah,
Schaumburg and Elgin and all that. But I was in Chicago.
yeah,
Uh I mean, there was a straight line to like what was the main street? Uh Irving. Was it Irving Street?
yeah. Irving, I think straight into to
Yeah.
downtown or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because the big mall was the Harlem Irving Mall, which was the first
Hmm.
enclosed mall in Chicago, which was like that was like right where I lived, and
Right.
and Rolling Stone Records was there, which was like my main
Your main
rec.
spot.
I mean, to get up other stuff, you would go downtown to Rose Records,
Right.
which is
Yeah.
all the classical music and new music and all that stuff. And at that time, when I was in high school, the interesting thing, I didn't know this at the time, but the buyer for Rose Record, the new music buyer for Rose Records, oh, I just forgot his name, excuse me, was the guy who started Cold Blue Records.
Oh
He
yeah. What's his name?
he left for he left to California and started Cold Blue. Jim
Yeah.
Fox,
Yeah. Jim Fox, I think, is who started Cold Blue, right?
I was in touch with him years later, and he
Yeah.
told me that. So
Yeah.
I
That's amazing.
probably met you when I was like 14.
I think there was a Rose Records. It was a chain, right?
It was a chain.
Yeah.
Originally the main one was downtown, and it did expand a bit. And it was great because I remember when ECM changed their distribution in the States from Polydor to Warner Brothers. This would be
Mhm.
like I was in high school. And so all the Polydor pressed copies became cutouts.
Oh yeah.
And Rose Records had like pretty much every single ECM record up to that point as
That's
cutouts.
cutouts. Yeah.
And I sold my guitar amp, and I used the money to buy like everything I could. And I don't think I've owned another guitar amp since.
Yeah. It was a good move.
Briefly I had one that was on loan, but otherwise, yeah, I sold my amp,
Just got
bought
the
all.
records. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember the first I bought that's probably yeah, early 90s, maybe earlier than that. I bought Ornette Coleman's Free Jazz as a cutout at one of these shops. It was 50 cents or whatever. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, this looks cool. I hadn't heard of Ornette yet, and I took it home and was just like, whoa, what's this? And then started like getting into everything else, and
Yeah, Rose. I mean, I think Rose was sort of the first one to expand. And when Tower Records finally came to Chicago, the
yeah,
Rose record slowly disappeared.
yeah, totally. Yeah, we had a few. I grew up in Crystal Lake, Illinois, which is like a northwest,
Yeah,
like it's not quite a suburb. Maybe it is now, but back then it was like out there.
yeah.
But
No, that rings a bell, Crystal Lake.
yeah, we had some good record stores in that,
Well,
few.
would you go to Evanston? Because Evanston was the other place for record stores, and there was a kind of that was the place where you would go to get stuff like Hafler Trio, Nurse Mary,
Right.
blah blah blah. There was a sort of legendary store there called
Yeah, what was that? Was it called like Vintage Vinyl or something?
I
No.
think it was.
Yeah.
It might have been. It might have been. I mean, it was the store where they put it in a plastic bag and increased the price 40%. It was one of the stores.
Yeah.
And what's his name from White House worked there? Peter Sotos
Okay.
from White House worked there,
Huh.
as well as the dude who was Intrinsic Action, Mark Solotroff.
I don't know. I don't know him.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
he's now I think he calls himself Bloody Minded.
Okay. I think I've
He
heard
was
of that
like, he
name.
was like, this is like 86, 87. So like every city that had industrial music had their local White House cover
Yeah.
band.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mean that in a negative way, but like in Chicago, it was, well, you had White House because
Yeah.
they would come because Peter Sotos lived there. But in Chicago, it was Intrinsic Action.
Okay. Yeah, that's funny.
So
Yeah, I
both,
never went to Evanston to get records, but I had a couple good shops, in the area, and then I would go to either when I got a little bit older, I would just go into Chicago and go to,
Yeah.
different places. And
So was Wax Trax still around at that time?
yeah, it was.
Yeah, Wax Trax. I mean, I don't know about when you were going, but Wax Trax was also a really good place to get this kind of stuff. They also sold like cassettes, like you could get
Right.
Corn Plastics cassettes there.
Right.
Uh, I mean, at that point, it was almost pre CD, so it was like they had the stall tapes there.
Yeah.
That was also, and you could actually trick you. They would actually, you could give them your cassette for like on consignment.
Store credit or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for store credit. Yeah. Basically, I'd give them my Sound of Pig cassette, and I would get the new Corn
Yeah.
cassettes and stuff like that. So it's actually, Wax Trax doesn't have that image, but it was really, really good for that kind of stuff. I mean, at that time in the 80s in Chicago, the places you would buy the kind of music we're interested in it
Yeah.
actually was Wax Trax or Vintage Vinyl up in Evanston.
Right.
I think you're right. Good memory, Vintage Vinyl. There was other stores up
Yeah.
in Evanston, and at that time, in the other direction, Park Ridge,
Mm.
which was sort of, what's that famous architect who has a lot of buildings in Chicago? He's a very famous American architect, sort of like the
Vanderohe?
No.
No.
Well, that guy. Park Ridge
Yeah,
Park Ridge had a lot of his homes, and Park Ridge also was a kind of a hub for more like normal used records.
Right.
And if you were really had time on your hands, you would go down to the University of Chicago campus.
Right. Yeah, there's some old shops down there too. Yeah, I think by the time I went to DePaul, Wax Trax was gone. So that was when the big Tower Records on,
which wasn't that far from DePaul.
Yeah, Lincoln Avenue or whatever. It's just like, that was massive.
That's too bad because Wax Trax was great.
Yeah. I went there, I think, once or twice when I was in high school, but I was like just getting into weird stuff. So
yeah, and the staff were appropriately weird as well, in a good way. They were all real characters.
Yeah.
Remember My Life with the Thrill Kill Cult?
Yeah.
The main, God, what was his name? I forget his name. He was a nice guy, the main guy in that group. He was a real character. He would show up to Eugene Chadbourne shows and just like heckle him constantly.
Yeah, it's just like, I gotta love it. When you were at DePaul, were you actually in the music school?
Yeah.
How did you audition like on guitar, or how'd that work? That's what I did.
Double bass. I started with double bass in the orchestra.
Okay.
I think I got some, not giant, but I got some sort of what do you call it?
Scholarship.
Scholarship.
Yeah.
I got a scholarship for double bass, a very small one, because I wasn't that good. But I got a scholarship for jazz guitar from Chicago, the band. Chicago had Chicago. They started DePaul.
Yeah, that's right.
They have, they probably still do to this day, have a scholarship
in their name.
It's not like huge money. It's like just an assistance scholarship.
Yeah.
For jazz guitar, which I think I promptly lost like the first year because I was more interested in doing other things.
Yeah, that's what happened to me too.
So yeah, but that first year I was like in the orchestra. I mean, I was in the orchestra the whole time I was there.
Yeah.
But I think I stopped the jazz studies after the second year when I committed to composition.
Yeah, I was the same way. I got in as a guitar player, but then just pretty quickly like moved to like composition and didn't really fit in anywhere actually, but it's how it goes there.
At that time, did they have an electronic music studio when you were there?
Barely. Barely.
When I was there, it was a DX7 and a 1/4-inch 8-track machine.
Okay. Yeah, that's probably what it was.
And probably a Mac. It might have been a Mac SE. Might have been the one before it, but it was running not Soundforge. It was running. Oh, it's important I remember this. It was running Turbo Synth. It
Oh
had a
wow.
copy of Turbo Synth on it. Pretty
That
much
was
all.
that right. It was like you went into the music building and the studio was like on the left. It was kind of like a small spot. I remember being in
I
there.
think by the time you went there, they had rebuilt
They
it.
had moved it. Yeah.
When I was there, it was just stuck in an unused room. It wasn't an
Yeah.
actual. It was just a room with a table with those three things on it.
Yeah. I think I took some sort of like
I think they
intro
formed.
to
Yeah, they formally, because there was no. After I left, within a year or two, I remember, they formally started an engineering
yeah, they
uh,
did.
and that so the engineering program was starting. A lot of things were rebuilt,
Right.
and so the electronic music studio was sort of under the wing of the engineering. They're sort of like shared between the
That yeah,
engineering
that's right.
department.
Yeah, because I had
So
some friends that did the like recording, you know, recording engineering track or whatever. I didn't do that, but um yeah, it was I don't know, I didn't really spend any time in the studio there or like I did was just doing stuff on my own outside of, you know, school. So
I mean, it's funny. It's only a few years, but like
I know.
when you lived there, it had become possible and affordable for people to buy stuff.
Right.
But when I was there, it still wasn't.
It was still really expensive. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and
Just
it's only
in yeah, it was just
really
like
only a
five
couple of
years. It's
years.
crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Like at that time, it was impossible. I mean, I had an eight track, but
Hmm.
that was thanks to one of the guys in Illusion of Safety who was getting rid of his. It
Right.
was like this old Tascam thing
Hmm.
that had the mixing desk built in,
Right,
and
right.
then a quarter-inch eight track on the right that you open. It had a glass thing you would open up, and he was moving to half inch,
Yeah.
so I got it from him for like almost nothing.
Yeah.
Like I think I might have just like paid him from gigs and stuff. So I was lucky, but otherwise, like yeah, I couldn't.
Yeah.
I found a CX. I think it was called the CX5M or something like that. It was this Yamaha computer that didn't really spread very much in America, but it was mostly in Japan and England. It
Hmm.
was this Yamaha computer that had a four operator DX7 inside,
Oh wow. Okay.
connected to your TV, and
You
you
could
could do
program.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Huh.
so I found that at like a garage sale. So that was my DX7.
Yeah. I had a this ancient 4 track, you know, cassette recorder, but it was like a it looked like a rack mount unit, and then it had a separate, you know, kind of mixing board under it, and it had like a built-in like spring tank reverb and stuff. It
Oh,
was
who
bizarre,
made
but
that?
I don't know. It was something my brother had gotten, you know, like in the 80s, and you know, I just took it over from him and used to make, you know, try to make stuff on that. But and then, you know, probably, you know, we're talking like 96 or 97, and you could maybe start recording on a computer a little bit, you know, and
I'm
um,
listening. I just know when I
yeah,
have a ridiculously large bottle.
get some water. Yeah. Um, yeah, you know, like probably right around the middle time that I was at DePaul, I finally got like, I remember I got a Mac clone. Do you remember those? And it made like
Yes, I do.
the
Uh,
clones. I got one of those and I could start recording, you know, some audio onto it and playing
was it
around with it.
running Mac OS or was it running that? Oh, what was that?
Yeah,
It was.
it
There was
was
that.
running OS.
I mean, this is a whole rabbit hole, but there's this other alternative Mac OS at that time. Oh, what was it called? It's really fascinating. I'll find. I can't remember now,
Yeah.
but there was this other Mac OS kind of offshoot made by somebody that was really ahead of its time, but
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
didn't. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. It was funny that they would let, you know, other machines, you know, use the Mac OS, and then they just totally locked it off.
I believe that's the time Jobs was out, if I
Probably. Yeah.
remember correctly,
Yeah.
when it was bought out.
Yeah. So
Right,
you,
because sorry,
yeah,
I will stop myself after this because
no, no,
old computers is a wormhole you won't be able to pull me out of.
I love it.
Because a friend of mine had a Next computer at that time,
Okay.
so that Jobs was off doing the Next computer, which was
Right.
really incredible.
Right, right.
That was my first time to be able to actually do real time computer stuff. Because like with TurboSynth and everything, it wasn't real time. It was still,
Right.
set up and then
Wait
right.
for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty quickly, but still you had to wait. TurboSynth was fantastic. That was great.
Yeah, I remember I ran that on my Mac clone. I would have, you remember that program called Thonk?
Yes, I do.
It was like a early granular synthesis thing, but it was like you feed it a file and then I would wait overnight, and then in the morning I'd be like, oh cool. That would be
You know
horrible,
what? The guy who wrote Thunk is the guy who created um Altiverb.
Oh really? Huh.
Yeah, same guy.
That's
Sorry.
cool. Yeah. No, I love that. Yeah. You wonder where, some of these people go, but makes
Yeah,
sense.
a lot of
Yeah.
that type of stuff, a lot of it was coming out of Holland at that time.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of, I think partially because Holland was putting the government was putting a lot of money into research centers, so there was a lot of
Like
kind of
Stime and stuff like that.
time, and there
Yeah.
was a lot of others.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. Were you did you study with like George Flynn at DePaul, or who?
Yes.
Yeah, you did.
Yes.
I never studied with him. I had classes with him, but I studied with Kurt Westerberg. Do you remember him?
Kurt Westerberg,
Yeah, he was really
also
yeah. He was a nice guy, but it was
yes,
just I
yes.
would come in with something weird, and they just were like, I don't know what to do with you, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that was wild. But
The
there
only
was
only
like,
thing they ever said to me is like, "Well, it's been done before." I said, "Well, I haven't done it before."
yeah. I know. They were always trying to get me to do like, 12 tone music or serialism or
Yes, well,
something.
that's like a 24-hour talk alone. That
Yeah, I
you
know.
know, because that's a thing they can adjudicate.
Right, right.
Okay, this is wrong and this is right.
Right. You can analyze it, and yeah, you're doing this right, you're doing this wrong, blah blah blah. Yeah, all the analysis and theory of it, but
I mean, it was
uh,
with George Flynn, it was a little bit of a shame because I mean, and I had some lessons with him where I was witnessing him having a uh, uh, existential crisis in front of me,
oh
because he
really?
is
Yeah.
someone in his earlier years who, when he was in New York, sort of had his feet in both camps.
Right.
I mean, he did, like for Finadar, he did a lot of the recordings of the really austere Cage pieces and blah
Right.
blah blah. So once he decided to go full academic, I mean, and this is a long time ago, but he was still having serious existential problems, I think. And I remember I convinced him to go see Cecil Taylor one time because George Flynn was an excellent pianist.
Right. And some of his
Oh,
pieces sounded like composed
yeah,
Cecil Taylor or something,
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember when
But he
Canal,
wasn't he wasn't aware of Cecil Taylor though?
not really,
Oh,
no.
that's crazy. I
And
thought
he
he thought
went,
he was.
no, no, no.
Hmm.
And he came back after the next lesson we had after the concert, because I avoided him at the concert. Uh, you know,
Yeah.
um, he said, "Well, it'd be great if he just sat down and got all the ideas properly arranged." Okay, okay, buddy.
Yeah, man. All right.
I mean, it's it's a different way of looking at things, you know.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
I mean, I've said it before, but all those, in the end, it was, for me, it was worth it because of one thing, because all I faced was sort of like, except for one professor who I really liked there, all I faced was like opposition.
Right.
And that's fine, because the thing I learned was, well, it's not the thing that I learned, is that I was put into a situation where I felt they were wrong, and that's
Right.
fine.
Hmm.
But I had to learn to articulate why I thought they were wrong, because I
Exactly.
talked
Yes.
to these guys
Right. You
just
had to
by,
defend your work, and
yeah.
yeah.
I wasn't even defending the work, because it probably wasn't doing. I mean, the things I was really doing, I didn't even
Right.
show to them.
Right.
I mean, I made like my first 4 or so records when I was in college, like Tamper and all that stuff. That
Yeah.
was all made in the college. I wasn't playing that stuff,
Right. You were just doing that like
the
on
stuff I
your
had to
own.
do.
Yeah.
Uh, so, uh, so yeah, I was in a situation where I had to sort of learn to articulate it instead of just going, you know? So therefore, I think I learned, oh, there is such a thing as having an aesthetic and developing your aesthetic and having your aesthetic fed by study and experience, et
Right.
cetera, and so on. And
Yeah.
I think I learned that lesson probably sooner
Hmm.
than I would have if I wasn't in such a sort of what's the word? What kind of situation? Not contrarian situation. Well, yeah, that.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. I felt exactly the same way too. I had to learn to like talk about my own work, and yeah, explain it or articulate it and tell tell them what I'm trying to do, with my music or my pieces or whatever. And
Did you graduate?
yeah, I did. Barely. So I was doing like composition and jazz guitar, and so I did this like senior recital, um, which was actually a guitar recital. I had like a small group that I put together with some of my friends, and we played like half my compositions and then half like some standards or whatever. But my compositions were like super super out there, like free improv and all sorts of stuff. And I remember my guitar teacher came to the recital, and he didn't say anything. And then I had my final lesson with him like shortly after that, and he was like, Greg, so I just want to tell you that I hated your recital. I thought it was terrible, and I really want to fail you, but I don't want to have to deal with you again next year, so I'm gonna pass you. I was like, holy shit.
Who was your guitar teacher?
It was this guy Bob Palmieri. He was just like a jazz bow guitar player guy.
He wasn't there when I was there.
No, and
I
the next year I had friends who were like a year younger than me, and the next year he instituted a policy that you couldn't like, I don't know, like play too weird of music on your recital or something because of what I did.
Really? Oh,
He was basically like, he told me, he was like, I always thought I was like a really open-minded guy, when it came to music and stuff, but you've really challenged that for me. I was like, all right, I've done my job.
Anybody who ever couches with those words
I know,
is
I know.
always like the most dunderheaded person.
Yeah.
I forget his name. He was a Japanese guitarist.
Ed DePaul.
He's American, but Japanese.
Okay.
And I played with Joe Henderson.
Huh.
I forget his name now. But one of my first lessons with him, I was, because I was already, I was basically just playing like Derek Bailey at that point.
Yeah.
He's like, well, he's like, oh, you're into that kind of stuff. And I was like, yeah, I like Derek Bailey and Henry Kaiser. And he's like, and he went to his shelf and he said, here, you'll probably like this guy. It's not really for me. And he gave me a copy of the Takiyanagi Tagashi record.
Pulsation.
So, yeah, Pulsation.
Yeah, Pulsation. Oh, I love that one.
And the funny thing, I really was not into it.
Yeah.
Because it's Takiyanagi on nylon.
Nylon, right? Yeah, it's different.
Even to this day, I'm not into his nylon playing.
The nylon stuff, yeah.
So I had a record of his for years, going, yeah, this guy's. wasn't until like maybe 2 or 3 years later when I went out to Kaiser's place that I heard the good stuff.
The electric stuff, yeah. Yeah, I remember my guitar teacher. I think I was like just starting to like listen to some Derek Bailey at the time, and I mentioned Derek Bailey to my teacher, and he had absolutely no idea who Derek was, and I was like, okay, this kind of like I'm doomed here, So
wow.
Yeah,
that name rings a bell though.
Yeah, he was kind of a younger guy. I don't know. I don't know the timelines of any of these teachers because it was just like I was there for 4 or 5 years.
I mean,
And that was it.
I stopped guitar lessons, I think, after my first year. So
Right
I
away.
wouldn't,
Yeah.
not even school with the department.
Um, I saw you play another time, like probably around that time, and this is a memorable show for me. And you know, I wanted to talk to you about it because
I don't,
he's no longer with us. I saw you, Finez, and Peta at the Empty Bottle, and I think it was the first time they had ever played in the
yeah,
States.
that
And
show had a kind of, yeah, that there was something about that show.
I think did David play too? Maybe
Yes.
solo. Yeah, but Finez, I remember that you and Peta did a duo like behind the mixing board, and you're playing like laptops or something, and I don't know. I was like, it was great. You know, I was like,
Yeah,
uh, pretty
it's, we were all three of us were kind of pissed off that night.
really.
Uh, yeah, it's a long story. It doesn't, but yeah, it doesn't matter. But yeah, I had set up the show, and I was actually over in Europe playing with them
Hmm.
when I found out the show had been changed
Oh no.
uh, to something we didn't want to do.
Yeah.
And so Peter was just like, fuck this shit. Let's not even use the stage. I remember Christian was back where like and there's that like kind of, there's the
Side.
stage, and then
Yeah.
there's that side room, the bar, and then you go into the other room.
Right. Right.
And I believe I was in the DJ booth behind the bar.
Yeah. I remember that.
Christian was in that back like corridor room,
Yeah.
and we were just playing with not even in eyesight of each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is really silly, but I distinctly remember I was also in the process of setting up a show for Lauren Connors and Alan Licht for later.
Oh, okay.
I'd given the owner, I had lent the owner of not what's it called? Fireside Bowl. Not Fireside Bowl. What was the name of that club?
Yeah. Fireside Bowl on
No, it wasn't a Fireside Bowl.
Oh.
It was the other one. It was the one that took over, that sort of overshadowed Lounge Acts.
Double Door? No.
No. I'll remember in a minute.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it became the club where everybody plays, where the Table of the Elements thing was at and everything. But I'm in the DJ booth during the Fennelberg gig, and I noticed the guy has taken the cover out of, what was he? Basically, he took the cover out of my Lauren Connors CD and like cut it up or something that he could use it for the Chicago Reader. And I remember I still have it. It was like, I took it, and I was like, what did you do to my CD? Because they weren't easy to get at that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I still remember that. It's like, why would this guy do
When'd you do that? Yeah. Yeah. Oh
God,
man.
I'll remember. Oh God, what was the name of that club? I could look it up real quick by looking Table of the Elements, Chicago. Table of the Elements.
Yeah, I always thought it was Empty Bottle was the place where everything was happening, but
Oh, Empty Bottle. Yeah.
Empty Bottle. Right, right.
Yeah. I thought I had said Fireside Bowl before.
You did. You said Fireside Bowl. That was like kind of a punk bowling alley, you know, or whatever. But yeah, Empty Bottle. That's where like
were you around for like the Table of the Elements thing and all that stuff?
yeah, some of it. I was, you know, basically, you know, I was in college, so I couldn't quite get into Empty Bottle, but as soon as I could, I was going there like
Yeah, they were fairly
many
strict
times a
about
week.
carding.
Yeah, they were. But once I was old enough to get in, I went there like, you know, all the time. Saw so much good stuff there.
Wow, saw the first, that was the first American Fennelberg show,
Yeah,
I believe.
yeah,
There
totally.
weren't many in America.
Right.
God, now that I think about it, there was only maybe two. Maybe we only played 2 times in America.
Hmm.
Gosh, now I think about it, outside that Chicago show, I can't think of. Because I remember that day, Peter and I was still God, I was still living with my parents, possibly. No, I couldn't have been. Uh, but um, I remember we went out to this computer store out by where I grew up, and we bought Pismos.
Oh,
Like
really?
big deal. Like we
They
were
had just
moving.
come out.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
I remember. Yeah, I can't remember if we used in that. I think Peter might have, but yeah, I remember it was probably not the day of the show, but it was like around that
Around
time.
that time. Yeah, yeah.
Now I think about it, why would they have come to America just for those? They probably weren't. Probably Christian had a tour or something, because they wouldn't have come to Chicago just for that one gig.
No, that doesn't really make sense unless there was some sort of like, you know.
Then we might have had something. I forget now, but
Yeah.
I do remember distinctly going to this, and it was a giant place as things as stores were at that time.
Yeah.
This computer store out on out by Harlem and Irving.
Yeah.
And we went to Pismos. That was like such a big
That was
deal.
so exciting. I remember when I got my first one, it was probably, a year or two later, and I was like, oh my God, I can do X, Y, and Z on here now, like I can, it's got a microphone input, I can run
Hot
sound.
swappable hot. Oh yeah, the mic input was very popular with all the Super Collider guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like Kevin used it a lot, and the Farmers Manuals guys also wrote a lot of stuff in Super Collider using the built-in mic.
Yeah. Yeah. That's wild computer times, but, um, would love to chat with you about your uh, work with film music, making music for films. I mean, you've made Jim, you've made so much music. It's like we can't talk about all of it, obviously. So, um,
Absolutely boring.
oh, come on, man, come on. Somebody likes it, Doesn't have to be you, but other people do. But I actually recently watched, well, two things that were interesting. There was like an interesting connection. I watched Picture of Light, which is one of the first things
Wow.
you did. Yeah. And, I wanted to like, hearing your new, soundtrack for Hands That Bind, I wanted to like hear something that was older. I thought, oh, this is a good, just to kind of compare. And yeah,
Probably not very different.
what's that?
Probably not very different.
No, exactly. It was pretty, there's a lot of similarities there, like, yeah, drone materials and other types of things happening. But then I watched, it must have been the first thing you did with Kyle Armstrong, which was called Magnetic Reconnection.
Yeah, magnetic reconnection. Yeah, that was the first one I did. Which he asked me because he saw a picture of Light.
That's what I was going to ask you. Like that is like clearly like,
well, the guy who shot
connected to that.
Guy who shot Magnetic Reconnection or Magnetic Connection, which is it?
I think Reconnection.
Yeah. Is a guy. He's cinematographer. The cinematographer of that film is a guy who was involved in all sorts of other things, and one of the things he was involved with was this English DVD label called Eureka, which is sort of like England's Criterion.
Yeah.
And I've been in touch with him because he was having me writing texts for like some of the Japanese films they were putting out. Okay. So I knew this guy through that. And so he shot that film, and I guess they talked about Pictures of Light, and he's like, oh yeah, I know that guy. he writes stuff for the DVD books. So that's how that happened. That's how we connected.
You connected with Kyle that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
And not you did,
strangely enough.
Yeah. And then you did another movie of Kyle's before you did this one. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think that got distributed very widely.
Yeah, I couldn't find it anywhere. Yeah, until First Light, right?
Yeah. Very good.
Yeah, it's just like it's funny, I went on to like IMDb and just saw all this, a lot of the stuff that you've done. I was like, I didn't know Jim did all this stuff. So it's interesting to see, all the different films that you've been involved in.
I mean, a lot of them I think sometimes are probably used some. I mean, there's actually more because a couple times, especially like when I was living in New York,
Hmm.
I scored quite a few films, and it's gonna sound silly, but it's really kind of what it people would ask me to, okay, I want to word this correctly without it sounding, it was sort of the beginning of when independent film soundtracks started sounding like twee versions of Eureka, let's say.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that still exists to this day.
Yeah, I hear it.
and and people would uh, want me to do the scores, thinking that
Right.
uh, I was being sincere. Let's say
Yeah.
instead of and they would just want me to basically make do the first 2 minutes of Eureka.
Yeah.
You know, so a bunch of films that I scored eventually, the producers like pulled my score
Oh, really?
and then hired someone to basically make a twee version of what, and that happened quite a few times. And those
Wow.
films out everything.
Wow.
Uh, yeah, that happened a lot when I was living in New York. So I
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
did quite a few film scores, and and then the most like soul sucking job there is doing music for ads.
Oh,
Uh,
really? You did do some of that.
because I had one of my best friends in New York worked at a was the sound director at a whatever they call ad house.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, those meetings with really to this day some of the most like soul sucking moments of my life is sitting in a room with like people from an ad company,
Right.
listening to them talk about you know what they want from the music.
Yeah,
And
and not knowing how to explain it.
well, they just don't even know what they're
They don't
talking about.
know. Yeah, yeah.
They really, it's just some sort of ritual that has to be done, and really, really just want to crawl away and throw into a ball those things.
Yeah,
So
that's tough. Um, so if you, like some of the some soundtracks are like pre-existing pieces that you had made
I mean, yeah,
as solo works, and then people, you know, patch
there's
them into a film, or
in terms of like actually doing the score. I mean, even something like Love Liza. I
yeah,
mean, the director wanted to use half of it. He wanted to use existing songs, which, frankly, I didn't want to do.
right, right,
Because like he wanted to use things with lyrics, and I really didn't want to do that.
yeah. Well,
But
a lot
he
of
really,
times they just like plug that stuff in as placeholders, right? And they're like, okay, and then we're gonna get Jim to
well,
do
yeah,
some
that's
music, you know?
that's another. I mean, that's another sort of what's the word for it? Not dugout, not trap. I've got to excuse my English.
It's okay.
Not trap, but uh, when they dig a hole in the dirt and they cover it and you fall in, um,
Yeah,
uh, are the temp scores, because directors can really, really get attached to the temp
right.
scores.
Yeah,
And
then they just want something that's like that, or just use that at the in the end or whatever.
it depends on the director, but some directors really, really get attached to the temp score. And like with Love Liza, he had plugged in songs from my records.
Hmm.
And I think with Love Liza, like in terms of actual original score, it's only like half the music,
Hmm.
because he used a whole bunch of songs from, I think, I forget where, but so even that one wasn't a real film score. Um, I mean, Kyle's films are probably the only time I've ever been given like 100% make the score. Oh, the second Wakamatsu film I did, because the first one was he was so hands-on about
Uh-huh.
exactly what he wanted, that this almost he was almost laughing. Like the second time he's like, okay, this time just go make it. I won't say anything.
Wait, which was the second one? The My
It's a,
Man, or I don't know what the
that's
translation is.
that's Kumakiri.
Oh, okay.
Uh, um, second one was called Cayenne Hotel Blue.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because I mean, uh with Red Army, I mean, that was a film he wanted to make for like 30 years. I mean, he
Mm.
even destroyed his own like vacation house for the end section of the film. It was a serious film for him, so he had he's very specific about what he wanted for the movie.
Yeah.
My my ideas got in there. We you know, it was fine. But the second film after that, he wanted to make a really quick film like he did back in the 60s,
Hmm.
just like get the Red Army out of his system. So
Yeah.
he made the film Cayenne Hotel Blue, um, which really quickly and in the style. So he was just like he did back in the 60s. He just said make to like Yamashita or whoever. It's just like just
Hmm.
do a session and give it to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, those times, yeah, really, really hands off. And Kyle is really pretty much hands off. I mean, he knows. He's like, well, the reason I'm asking him to do it is because I want him to do his thing.
His thing. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, I mean, of course he has ideas and stuff,
Right.
but and usually if the director is amenable to it, I'm usually talking about the placement of the music and where it should stop and start more than the actual content of the music.
Right. Right.
That's more important to me in many ways than
Hmm.
the music. You'll make it, it'll happen.
Right.
But like structuring, knowing what it's supposed to, what its role is, and what it's supposed to do
Right.
structurally. And
So he'll, for example, Kyle will give you like areas within the film where he thinks he wants to have music, and then you'll watch the images and start to
yeah,
compose for those sections or whatever.
I mean, and he like most. So I'm just gonna take a drink.
Yeah, go
Most
for
like it's just water bottles in Japan are ridiculously large, so
Well, it's good.
it'll look comical over Zoom. Um, um, I mean, he does a temp track as well, but in
Mhm.
his case, he always uses my stuff. So
Replace your stuff with more of your stuff.
that's actually okay. That's
Yeah.
fine with me. It's when people put other people's stuff in that it's really weird.
Yeah, yeah,
That can be a little weird sometimes.
yeah.
Sometimes, but yeah, he's. I mean, in with this film, there was one particular sort of texture he really, really wanted from that. He because he was using my string quartet from '90, which was done
Oh,
at the
yeah, yeah.
that didn't go over.
But
As
wasn't that re-recorded recently or
I
something?
record actually quite a few
Or you
years
did?
ago, about 15 years ago,
Yeah,
re-recorded it.
yeah.
But um, that was something that was sort of like he's like, this is the for me sound wise, this is the key to the film. Is this is really gets it.
Okay.
So I didn't use that, but the the techniques to make that sound, I
Yeah.
used them. But otherwise, he's fairly hands off. And he really wanted there to be a soundtrack record. Usually, I don't do soundtrack records
Right.
because it's just you take the music out of the film. It's just like these 1-2 minute clips,
Right.
music.
How do you put it together?
Yeah. And I
Um,
mean, I'm happy that there's Michael Small soundtracks and stuff like that. But
right.
I never. I I'm I like making records. You
Right.
know,
Right.
so it has to work as a record. So
Yeah.
he this time he really wanted a soundtrack, and and I was like, okay, I've got to let me try to make a record out of this. And the thing that really it's just really silly, but the thing that said, okay, yeah, this is worth doing is because I imagined a gatefold LP that had a picture of Bruce Dern in it.
Bam.
That was
There it is. That was you. That was
honestly,
all you.
honestly, that's the thing I asked
Yeah.
the drag city guys. I was
You're
like,
like,
can I have a gatefold with
that's
this
the only
picture?
reason you're doing it.
Well, it's not the reason I'm doing it. It's like if that can happen, then I'm totally on board.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love it. Um,
It's kind of wild to me. I've I have a record with my name on it, and it has Bruce Dern.
Bruce Dern. I know, that's incredible. I haven't seen the film obviously yet because it's not available, but I'm excited to check
Very
it
good.
out. I've seen the
It's very
trailer
good.
and stuff, and yeah,
It's got,
love the soundtrack. It's funny that the soundtrack's available before the movie is like widely
I
available.
wonder if that's ever happened before.
I don't know.
I mean, I'm sure maybe like by a week or two, but this will be like a considerable amount of time. I don't think
Yeah,
it's coming out for the year.
yeah,
And it's been done for maybe 3, 4 years now.
right. For a while, right?
Obviously there was everything that
Yeah.
happened. But and it's got Paul Sparks. Will Oldham's really good in it. He's
Oh, I bet.
got a really great scene.
Yeah.
Not similar, but similar in intensity to his scene in Ghost Story, if you've seen
Oh,
that
okay.
one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Very,
Um,
very.
so like for this soundtrack, are you mostly doing stuff at your home studio? But yeah, I know
Yeah,
you,
it was all made in this room.
yeah, and but you recorded some other, musicians, or they just send you things to
No,
work
no,
with.
Joe Talia
Hmm.
and Marty Holobeck actually came out here and
We're just
recorded
right
right
there.
there.
Yeah, yeah, that's great.
And I mean, Marty was playing the double bass. I'm playing double bass, I think, on the main theme.
Yeah.
But the sort of repetitive stuff with the cymbals, that's Marty.
Okay.
And Joe is playing cymbals.
Yeah.
And then Hatano played well, she didn't actually play violin. It's that one thing that Kyle really wanted. It wasn't the recording of the string quartet, but it was a recording of another thing that I did, and Hatano played live. And so that's there's a little bit of that in the film, but otherwise, outside of that, it was all done pretty much all in Kima here.
Oh, okay. Hmm.
Pretty much,
There's like, what's that?
it's pretty much 95% Kima
Kima.
stuff.
Yeah. And then there's some piano in there that sounds like it's like
Oh yeah, yeah,
just
yeah.
intonation or microtonal.
It's actually the octave divided into 32,
Yeah.
and it wasn't
That
because
really
of it.
like that perked my ear up when
I
it
think it's
came out.
called the Omega tuning,
Hmm.
if I remember correctly. Uh, and I didn't pick it for any sort of particular overtone or ratio reason. It was just
Yeah.
the one that's work.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's electronic tuning or synth,
It's
or piano kind of thing.
it's not a real piano,
Yeah.
obviously, but yeah, it's piano tech.
Piano tech. Is that like a sampled piano or a
No, it's a
synthesized one?
modeling.
Modeling. Okay.
Piano.
And then you
It's
can
just
just,
actually one of the first. It was one of the first sort of modeling software things that I really like could get on board. That I really liked.
yeah, yeah. And then just map whatever tuning you want onto that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that and that I'm actually playing.
Hmm.
It's yeah, that thing where it's basically bass, drums, and piano is basically us playing it live.
Yeah. Um, you still work with Kima a lot? I
Hmm.
know you've mentioned that
That's pretty much the only thing I use now.
yeah, you're really into it.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't touched. I mean, the analogs like the Surge and all that in a long, long time.
Okay. And you were like pretty deep into Super Collider, right, for a while?
No, I was a Max guy for a
You
long
were a
time.
Max guy? Oh, okay. I always thought you did Super
I mean, I
Collider
used
stuff,
Super
but
Collider a little bit, but no, I started using Max sometime like 95.
yeah.
No, earlier, because I used it when it was just Max.
Yeah, just the MIDI and data stuff.
Yeah. But I quit Max around, I bought a Kima sometime in the late 90s
Yeah.
when it was the Capybara.
Hmm.
And I wasn't quite ready for it yet.
Right.
I sold it and went back to Max, and then I just stopped using my computer altogether for a while, like around 2000.
Okay.
And then I never really went back to Max.
Yeah.
But then when I forget what year it was, when the Capybara, when they put out a new hardware unit that was much smaller and much stronger, the Pacorana. Then I started using Kima again, and pretty much only used it since.
And is that something
I
that
occasionally use the Nord modular
yeah,
because I do. There's certain things about it that I really like, but pretty
right,
much just yeah.
yeah. And they update the software end of it, but then the hardware is kind of fixed, or you can
Yeah,
get
yeah. I
updates on
mean,
that.
they're on the third generation of the hardware now.
Okay.
It's called the what is it called? 1 second. Oh, Pacamara.
Yeah, yeah,
And the software is updated fairly often. I mean, the thing
yeah.
is, it's I mean, it's a little different than even Max because uh, in Max, I mean, I'm really simplifying it here. In Max, if you want to get down to like all not assembly level, but just above assembly level,
Yeah.
you've got to write your stuff in C and
Right.
then
Right.
compile it to make the objects. You don't have to do that in Kima. You just work at ground level.
Working
You know,
right at that. Yeah.
I mean, not a I mean, on the old machines, on the Capybara, you actually could work at assembly level. Uh,
Okay.
I'm simplifying all this, but so yeah, it's a little different, and it's everything from the ground from day one ground up. Everything is sample based,
Oh,
not
okay.
it's all by sample.
Yeah.
So so uh, so Gen is the closest.
Yeah,
Gen
that's
is
like the
like
newest.
It's sort of like the Max equivalent to Kima.
Right, right. Yeah, that's something I haven't. I used to use Max for years too, and kind of not as much in recent years, but yeah, Gen is like a whole world that I haven't quite dove into yet. But
Gen, if you use Gen, it's close to how Kima works.
yeah,
It's a little different. It's a little different, but it's close. It's the same. It's a different way of thinking because
yeah,
you are working on everything by sample, and
right,
I mean, you can't even build a filter unless you're working on that level. I mean,
right, right.
until then, you actually couldn't build a filter in Max really,
Yeah.
unless you went outside of Max into C, and then
Hmm.
wrote it there and then compile it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, back in the day, like in the 90s when I was using Max, you were working on the other definition of samples, you're
Yeah.
manipulating
Sound
samples. And
files. Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, you would maybe have things like filters and ring modulators, but they were kind of wonky. I mean, I don't mean that as an insult to Max. It's just how it was.
Yeah.
Uh, but once you start getting into like, I'm going to make my thing from the ground up,
Hmm.
that's worth working by sample, the other definition of
Yeah.
sample rates. That's where it gets really, really important.
Yeah.
And you can hear the difference. I mean, even if you just listen to the Autekra stuff,
Right.
Robin showing like that moment where Gen came out,
Right.
and I'm sure they had immediately mastered it within a few weeks,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
as they do. You can hear like how much better it sounds.
Yeah. Like
You go from
just
like
sonically.
yeah, just
Yeah.
sonically EP7. You go to that. You go to XI. It's like, oh,
Yeah. It's
because
crazy.
that really, really, for lots and lots of technical reasons that are boring, that really is the difference. When you're making something from the ground up, you've got
Yeah.
to deal with stuff on set by sample rate.
Right. And
I
so
don't know
you.
why I talk about this, but
Oh no,
that's
just
that's
interesting
kind
that.
of that's kind of why Kima sort of got me in its clutches, because you can
Right.
move between studying like pure science, studying and learning and using it like a what you call it, like a not a what they God, my English, that's science machine, you know
Science machine.
like not like like test equipment,
Yeah, like a
science
laboratory or something.
lab, like, yeah, you really can use it like that and learn things and build things and blah blah blah, and then you can move it. Okay, now I understand this and I can do this. You can move between all the from pure science and pure study and pure learning to making things. You
Yeah.
can go through the whole arc on Kima.
Right.
I mean, you can do it to a degree. I mean, especially now with Gen, you can do it on Max.
Yeah, yeah.
Especially now that you've got Gen. Um, but I mean, and with Kima, because all of the stuff's being done on a dedicated, I forget what they call it. Like they say GPU for graphics or
Right.
whatever
The
they.
dedicated
Yeah, I mean,
processor just for
yeah,
sound or audio.
stable
Yeah.
as hell. It's the
Yeah.
stablest thing you'll ever work with.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, it's great. I love it. It sort of completely maps with how my brain works.
Right.
Like,
So have you built up like a bunch of tools over the years in Kima that you
yeah,
like to use, or are you? I mean, you're probably always making new stuff too, but
I mean,
yeah,
I'm always making new stuff, but there's some that have uh, ended up uh, being used more than once. I
yeah, yeah.
mean, I do build things specific. There was like a lot of things I built specifically for the film soundtrack,
Okay.
uh, um, and you know, I mean, usually like the Bandcamp stuff is usually just like, okay, I built this thing and I made something.
Jim's Kima research project. Yeah,
Basically, that's what they are.
I love it. I love it.
I mean, like
Um,
that last one, it was all just made from like 2-minute recording of the seaside, but
okay.
these things I had made in Kima. I mean, basically,
Hmm.
like I'm making things and I've got okay, oh, okay, blah blah. Basically, that simple. So
So,
yeah, the stuff outside, yeah. I'd forgotten about the piano, which is funny because the piano is really kind of the uh I guess the main character in the music, I guess, really.
yeah, well, when it comes in, I think it comes in at least on the record. It comes in kind of towards the end, and it's like it's pretty striking. I think because it's
Oh, really? It isn't on the first track?
I can't remember, but there is one moment where I just
Oh,
noticed
you're right.
the
You're right.
tuning
You're
of
right.
it.
Right. That's the accordion thing.
Okay.
Thought about, yeah, that's actually a record the recording of the accordion
Yeah.
that's in the soundtrack is actually from a recording of accordion I made like maybe 92, 93 that ended up on it's either Terminal Pharmacy or
Hmm.
it's something from around that time. I think maybe oh no. It's not Terminal Pharmacy. It's that there was that CD that was like Soviet France Halfler Trio Me.
Yeah.
I don't know CD, but the thing on there
Okay.
that that yeah, that's actually
You just grabbed a little piece
I
of
just yeah.
that.
Put it
With the Kima, are you doing a lot of sound processing and synthesis, both of those things, or
at
yeah,
both.
that's
Yeah,
what I thought. So you're feeding it samples or synthesizing things
yeah.
from the ground
And
up.
you
Yeah,
know, got like I don't know how many terabytes of things I recorded since then, like
right.
90s. So many times like I'm putting a recording from 30 years ago into it,
Yeah,
you
so
know.
you can just grab material that you have and
I mean, because
work
when it
with it
comes
and
out,
see
it
what
doesn't
happens.
sound anything like it. So
Right. Yeah, that's the nice thing about having an archive, right? You can just
yeah,
pull
probably a big
sounds from
reason I'm
whatever.
not using the synths and stuff anymore.
Right.
It's just at this point just eating itself.
Yeah. Use the material you've generated already. Um, how's the I was going to ask you about the Bandcamp thing. How's that kind of like changed your I don't know, relationships to like releasing music, like sharing it with people?
Well, I mean, I like. I mean, when I first noticed it, because I think I started fairly soon after it started, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly. I
Yeah.
think I've been on there for maybe 10 years now.
Yeah.
Um, I it was it was one of the first things on the internet that had an air of like of uh, decency.
What's that?
Decency,
Yeah, decency, right.
it's like okay, there's some honor here, and I like the idea of getting out of that cycle of the new blah 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 by blah
Yeah,
blah blah, and
right.
because really there's there's really only like 50 or 60 people interested in this stuff that I
Right. I
do.
know. I know.
Just put it up for them. If they want to hear it, if they want to hear it for free, they can hear it for free. If they want to download it, they can download it.
Right.
And it doesn't have to exist outside of the handful of people who are interested in it.
Right. Yeah.
And that was a real relief, really, frankly,
Yeah, that's
because
nice.
I
Gets you
don't
off
do
the
that. I'm not doing that stuff to make a living. I
right.
do other things to pay the bills.
Yeah.
And it's been like that since like the early 90s. That's why I learned to engineer,
Right.
so that I could make a living doing something else besides what I did.
Yeah.
And it's been times where I've been able to make a living from doing what I wanted to do, and that's great. But there was that time, and that's it.
Right.
And it's helpful, and I'm glad that Kevin did it. I'm really glad that he did it.
Yeah.
So I'm glad, there's a lot of like old friends from the cassette days, like Phil Klinger and people like that who are also doing it now. And
right.
I'm really happy about that because, I mean, just keep it modest,
Yeah, it's a nice like, outlet,
I don't think I even fit into the world of whatever we want to call that stuff now, the professional world of non-professional music. Don't even belong in there anymore, so it's good. I like it. I mean, it really honestly made me have very little desire to actually put out a physical record anymore.
Right. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that too. If it
the soundtrack, that really, if Kyle really hadn't asked me times to do it, I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah, and the Bruce Stern thing, obviously. So
yeah, that was a kick. But in general, I'm fine with and now the situation, it's so hard to get a record made. Especially here, they're so expensive now.
Yeah, they've gotten really expensive.
That I'm even just keeping up. I try to keep up with like really like I guess you would say family. Like my really really old friends.
Right.
Really do. I try to buy everything they do.
Yeah.
And it's just getting so expensive.
It's hard. Yeah, it's really hard.
And sadly, one of my oldest friends is Merzbow, so he's really a pain in the butt now.
Yeah.
Tell him every once in a while, slow down.
Yeah. Yeah, they're reissuing all of his records on vinyl, and you probably know.
The one thing is with him, they're not that expensive in Japan. Okay. Because he gets his copies and then he sells them straight to the stores here.
To the shops. Yeah, that's great.
His records are actually kind of cheap here. Luckily. If they weren't, I would have had to quit. But like, even like if Kevin puts out a record or Chris, it's like, oh God, they're $50.
I know. Yeah, especially.
What's that? I mean, this is
this is my business. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So like, are they that? I mean, because in Japan, it's a big part of it because the cost of shipping now is insane.
Yeah, shipping's gotten crazy.
I rarely go to the post office anymore but I sent a CD to Henry this week, and I hadn't sent something overseas in a while. It was one CD, and it was like about $40.
Oh, really? Jesus. Yeah, it's probably like $20 to send it from here to Japan or Europe or something. But all the prices of everything just keep climbing up, and it's kind of crazy.
No. I mean, I sometimes when I would see, I mean, I don't use Discogs and stuff like that much. But I always wonder, is that really what the shipping is, or is this?
Yeah.
I mean, the funny thing in Japan, shipping inside Japan is so cheap and so awesome. It's really the shipping, the postal system here is amazing. Yeah. But as soon as you send outside of the country, it's just.
Yeah, I mean the postal system here is good too. It's fine. You can send a record for $5, anywhere in the United States. But yeah, same thing. Once it goes
Are you
overseas,
are you
it's expensive.
finding that you have are having less and less customers outside of the United States, or were your customers always sort of the United States?
No, I mean, I get a lot of international orders still, even, even if they'll pay $26 to ship a record, to wherever, and on top of whatever the record costs. So, I mean, I send packages internationally, like, you know, every week basically. So, but maybe it's because they can't get those records there, and with shipping, it's probably the same price or
Is it
cheaper.
mostly LP now? Have CDs completely stopped in the States?
Yeah, I'd say
Wow.
so. Yeah.
It's still CD here.
I know Japan's a different story, right? Yeah, a lot of people. I mean, some people are like,
It's starting to change. It's
yeah,
starting to LPs are
change.
now becoming sort of
Oh,
a thing.
yeah,
More, it's more, what's the word? It's more like ooh when it comes
yeah,
out as,
kind of
and but they're
cool
really
factor.
expensive. Like
Oh, I'm sure
Japanese,
they're.
ridiculously expensive. I think there's only like two cutting places in all of Japan.
Right. That sounds right. I get some like Japanese imported records for my shop, and those are always really expensive. They're like 50, $60 a piece or something, just for a single record. But they're nice. They're really nice.
Oh, yeah, that's the thing. They were always really the best at it.
Yeah.
Uh, and I haven't been to the used record store in years, really. I mean, which is ridiculous because I used to go every day for about 10, the 12 years I lived in Shinjuku.
Yeah.
I lived within walking distance pretty much of like Mecca.
Yeah. That
Right.
was crazy record shopping there.
And it was kind of amazing how cheap it always was. I mean,
Hmm.
people have an image of records being really expensive in Japan, but that's because they would go. There was the records that the shops actually used to. I think they still do, but they really used to. They'd send staff out on trips on a
Yeah.
plane, and they'd spend a week, 2 weeks in a
Yeah.
country buying all the stuff up,
Yeah.
and then coming back. So you've got these records like, what, $1,000? It's like, well, that includes someone that
Can
worked for that for
includes
a long.
airfare. Yeah, I know.
But then everything else was super cheap.
Yeah.
Everything else was super, super cheap.
Yeah.
And
But you get,
I think it's still like that probably.
yeah. Yeah.
Especially now with the yen being like, a dollar is so strong here now.
Yeah, it is. Um, you got rid of all your records when you moved there, or
No,
before
no,
that
no.
even?
I got rid of half my collection when I moved,
Okay.
but it was still considerable.
Yeah.
And then about 2 years ago, I boxed no, not 2 years, right before the pandemic hit.
Uh-huh.
A record shop in Kyoto, very nice man. There's a Kyoto record show. I don't know if they've had it again since, but there was going to be a Kyoto record show. And he said, "Oh, if you want to come and sell stuff, I'll
Yeah.
give you it."
Oh,
And so
yeah.
I boxed up about half my collection to sell.
Nice.
And they've been in a room in boxes ever since.
Yeah.
So, and I think I'm going to cut the collection in half again because I
T
don't,
Takes up a lot of space.
it takes a lot of space. And frankly, I don't listen to music anymore. I
Yeah.
mean, it sounds silly, but I'm basically going to cut it down to like, it's almost like family album. It's
Right.
like, the Derek Bailey record stay,
Right.
It's like,
Yeah, those
like
stay.
all the things, basically things that were important in my life and are actually from that period in my life. I mean,
Yeah,
they've
yeah.
got
Yeah.
everything. It can go. It
Yeah.
can go.
Um, yeah, well, before we go, what are you working on now? What's the latest stuff you've been up to?
Now working on Aiko's next record. So I'm
Hmm.
in the middle of like string arrangements and horn arrangements and stuff. We
Nice.
just finished up because it was down to the wire, was the music for the new Hamaguchi movie. The guy
Right.
to drive,
I
because
saw like an announcement for that or something.
yeah, because it was really down to the wire to get it done for entry for Venice.
Okay.
That was really just like a couple of weeks ago. So up
Hmm.
until a couple of weeks ago, we were just working on the film score because I'm the in-house engineer.
Yeah, you are.
uh, uh, so yeah, that I mean, of course, the Kane stuff continues
Right.
continuously.
That was on my list to ask you about. That's insane. I can't believe. I mean, there's so much material.
You have no idea. It's insane.
It just
I'll
keep.
be I'll be doing this for another 5, 6 years at least.
That's wild, man. It's incredible.
And I mean, simultaneously, I'm working on like huge ones,
Oh yeah,
like pieces that are like, 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours long.
that's
Those,
amazing.
those I kind of doing slowly because I got to have one every month.
Right.
Um, so there's that. Um, um, Mostly working for other people these
Oh
days.
man.
It's fine,
Yeah.
uh, you know, when if I'm able to carve out time for myself, I'm studying.
Right.
I, sometimes they end up turning into something, but
Right.
most of the time I'm studying. So yeah, but that's fine. I mean, there was another reason to move. It's like it's really cheap to live out in the countryside.
Yeah.
Have to pay big bills. Like
Right.
in the city. That makes it possible for me to do, like the Kane stuff and all that because you know
Right.
it's basically that's you're doing it because you want to.
Right.
Yeah, and I help friends out with stuff sometimes.
Yeah. I guess the real question is, what are you studying? What's the study, it's going to lead to whatever music's next?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What have I been studying lately? Well, it's been about a week because what have I been studying? It's all DSP related stuff. This
Yeah.
this crap's always up on the, you know. Oh, and
Diagrams and things.
that's a Roland Kane orchestra score there. Oh my
Oh, the
God.
circular one?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, it's usually DSP oriented stuff and math, a lot of math, you know.
Yeah, that's a tough one for me.
Yeah, I was never, I always understood, it was, yeah, I always understood what was going on. I just wasn't very fast with it.
Right.
So I didn't do well in math in school because it didn't really, it wasn't oriented towards that kind of, it
Hmm.
was like, so yeah. So later on, I just hunkered down and, even during the pandemic, I was doing like refresher courses on like calculus and stuff like that on
Wow.
really strictly. I was doing it
Going
every day.
deep.
Yeah. So uh yeah, there's always varied things for me to study. There's always something to learn. So
Oh, yeah. It's endless, right?
but at the moment it's I'm in the middle of string arrangements, so I'm not getting to just much
Yeah.
study.
Yeah, you're the house arranger too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As I have been for many people.
Yeah. Hey, the T'Pol education comes in handy, right?
I don't think I don't think I think I'm arranging just like I did when I started football. I
Yeah.
don't think I very much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't need to take that knowledge. Um,
Really didn't. It's really shocking how much I didn't take advantage of what I could have learned. But I don't know if I could have learned it in that situation.
yeah.
That's a problem.
Yeah, when I look back on like music school, I went to graduate school for composition too, and it was kind of like,
Really?
yeah, I did.
I didn't do that.
I don't know. It was,
That's amazing.
I just wanted to keep doing music, so just kind of like did that too. But it's funny if I look back on those times, it was like the stuff I was doing outside of school, and then also the time I spent like in all the different libraries and listening libraries. That was like huge for me. DePaul, remember they had like a wall of vinyl, and you could just go in there and pull stuff out, and they had Sun Ra records in there, and whatever. And so I just spent all my time doing that.
Was the radio station back open when you were there?
Yeah, it was tiny though. It was in the basement of
Yeah.
I can't
I was
remember,
the
but
music director of it when I was there.
yeah, I was too for a couple of years.
But it was great when I've told this story before, but it's great. And it's awful. But when I was the music director there, I think sophomore year, probably freshman year, I wasn't music director. It was from
Hmm.
sophomore. That's when they started this plan to start the communications department, which ended up being related to the engineering department.
Right.
And I don't know what, but because of that, they had to shut down the radio station because it was going to be enveloped in the communications department. But
Oh,
because
that's
it was
right.
a
Yeah.
radio station that had to report to like College Music Journal and everything like that, they
Yeah.
had to keep it technically on the air to keep the license.
Hmm.
So for I think the last 3 years I was at DePaul, it was only broadcast in the cafeteria
Yes, that's right. I remember
and
this.
and there was really no DJs
Yeah.
most of the time. Especially the last 2 years, it was pretty much just me, like running, and I was playing stuff, but then I would like make to have two tape loops going, and that was the broadcast day. It's like, and yeah, and of course, plenty of records were coming in,
Yeah,
and
that was the reason to be music director. You just ask people to send you stuff, you know.
I was doing giveaways.
Yeah. Give
And I
away to
remember,
your friend.
I mean, it's this when people will like tear their hair out, but I remember I was in touch with Gramavision.
Hmm.
And, I got them to send me like maybe 20 copies of the Lamont uh, piano, yeah,
Yeah, well-tuned piano.
which somehow found their way to Germany. Uh,
Oh man.
but
Yeah.
I remember we must have gotten 50 promo copies, and I did not ask for these, but we got like 50 promo copies of Voivod Nothing Face. Like, I don't know why they just kept sending Voivod Nothing. And it was fine. I actually thought that record was pretty good,
Yeah.
but like we got so many of those.
They're just trying to get rid of them probably, and
I think they were really pushing that record.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and there was so many good things. The John Oswald did a radio only. It was Electra. I forget what anniversary it was, like Electra's 30th anniversary or something like that.
Hmm.
They asked John Oswald to do a plunderphonic of the Electra catalog.
Oh wow.
And so he did a CD. It's so good too. I think it's probably now up on his Bandcamp. But
Yeah.
let me grab it because you've probably never seen it.
Yeah, I would like to hear that one.
Yeah.
Oh
Wonderful.
yeah, I've heard about this. Yeah, yeah.
It's so good. And I had them send me like 100 copies.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Oh man.
Because I mean that was a promotional CD, so I didn't feel bad about it.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that. I got to listen to that. So he
It's
just he
really good, really, really good. Yeah, I think it's on his Bandcamp now.
yeah, he just dug into the Elektra catalog.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic.
Oh
That's
man.
a really great one. I wish I he's I'm not going to get like, oh, the young people. There are people who really should be paid more attention to, who aren't given their props like they should be these
Yeah,
days, and that music, and he's definitely one of them.
yeah, for sure.
I Absolute genius.
Yeah, amazing stuff. Totally amazing.
Really
Um,
good.
yeah.
No, no, no. No. What's it? Mysteries of Chicago. You want answers for or anything like
Oh,
that?
yeah, what else? Yeah, the Chicago memory lane, you know.
Make my brain remember that stuff.
I know. I think the only other thing I was going to ask you about Chicago was your what was that place called? I
Lower
don't know
Links.
no, did you book a concert series at like was it called Lunar Cabaret or something?
Yes. Yes, I
That
did.
because
Louis Corey.
that was right by DePaul, right?
Yeah, it
Or
wasn't
close
far.
to.
I
Yeah.
think I think I put Raphael on there.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
And oh, the guy from New Zealand who I didn't actually know, but I helped him put on a show. One of those classic New Zealand guys.
Hmm.
Uh Roy Montgomery, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
I was helping out the because I knew the guys who did Cranky before there was Cranky.
Right. Bruce and
Because
Joel.
Joel and not
Bruce
Bill.
Adams.
Bruce.
Yeah.
Bruce, I actually knew from being music director of the DePaul radio station
Oh, really?
because he was the press guy for Touch and Go.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
I knew Bruce from then, and
Do you
then
know
he moved.
that Bruce wrote a book? Have you heard
Yes,
about
I
this?
know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
talking
Yeah.
about all that stuff, I think.
I wanted to get, but it was the shipping here cost like twice as much as the book.
I'll send it to you. I have a copy, so
Oh, well, okay, thank you.
yeah, I'll send it to you. It's great. It's like Chicago, Chicago of the time.
Because then they started working at Cargo,
Hmm.
and Cargo, God, they're really, this is like a crime and punishment length stuff. Cargo was the manufacturer for Extreme.
Okay.
Yeah, do you remember that label Extreme?
Yeah, yeah.
And I was helping him as for U.S. press. Like I was sending U.S. press copies for
Yeah.
Extreme, and he was treating it like it was a normal label, so it was like a lot of copies. So I would be in Cargo Records a lot
Yeah.
when Joel and Bruce worked there.
Yeah.
And I remember they gave me a cassette of the La Bradford record before
Right.
it came out. That was going to be their first record.
Yeah, that's right.
And then I forget his name, the nice keyboard guy from La Bradford. He sold me his.
Mark? No.
I think Mark was a guitar player.
Yeah, Mark was a guitar player.
They were all nice.
Yeah.
But well, at first it was just the bass player wasn't in the band yet, I think, at that point. But he sold me his ARP 2600.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So all blah blah blah, all
Chicago and
Adams.
all the way. Yeah, good guys.
He was a funny guy.
Yeah.
And occasionally the most awesome thing. Oh, what's his name? It's so horrible. I'm usually good with names. The bass player in Killdozer.
I don't know.
Yeah, he was like a math teacher, if I remember correctly. But he occasionally would do press calls for Touch and Go.
Okay.
Once I would talk to him, and I was a huge fan of him.
Oh,
I loved Killdozer. It's probably the most memorable show of my life was, I don't know if you saw it, was the Killdozer White House show at Lounge Act, which it actually ended horribly. Someone lost their eye at that show.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. Somebody, I knew the guy who attacked the guy.
Oh,
and
man.
he lost sight in one of his eyes from it.
That's
during
crazy.
the White House.
And that was at Lounge Acts?
The Lounge Act. It was Killdozer, White House, and Intrinsic Action.
Yeah.
And man, I remember that show.
That's crazy.
Killdozer, I think, had just done 12 Point Buck, which was like they were at their peak.
Yeah.
So to see two different views of like taking this frontman on one show.
Yeah.
One being profoundly more successful than the other. And not ending with someone losing their eyesight was kind of amazing within a 2-hour period. Yeah, that show was kind of it was going to be shut down like up until the minute it started.
Yeah.
Really
too dangerous.
Really, yeah, there was a lot of people boycotting the show and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because Intrinsic Action did have some. If you're interested in Chicago industrial history, that's an interesting side road to go down.
Yeah.
That whole, which is connected to Vintage Vinyl up in Evanston.
Oh, right.
That still exists.
Yeah, I don't know.
Lots of interesting, weird stories about that store.
Yeah.
Lots of weird history.
Yeah, I went up there like, a handful of times from DePaul, to like go record shopping, but
It was very expensive.
yeah.
But for a while, for a period, it was really the only place you could get like like when Halfler Trio had like the Layla, I call it the Layla period, when all those
Hmm.
guys were putting records out on Layla
Yeah.
and KK in
Hmm.
Belgium, uh, kind of like right post Touch,
Yeah.
pre Plot, like that brief window. Uh, yeah, Vintage Vinyl was really the only place you could get that stuff.
Yeah.
Layla. There's a deep cut for your listeners.
That's a
Layla
deep cut, man.
record, KK out of Belgium. Layla, I think, was also, yeah, it was Belgium was the place for that stuff for a brief period. All the
Yeah.
labels were coming out of Belgium
Yeah.
because I think because it was played against Sam, the major distributor for that stuff.
Right. Was
It was
in
a weird
Belgium.
period where that music was becoming slightly popular. Like like the first few Current 93s,
Right.
like sort of like peeking their head above, you know, the
Yeah.
line that they were below before for a brief period there. Yeah.
Yeah. I just got like a stack of Current 93 records at my shop. It's kind of crazy, but
Oh,
yeah.
do people come in and sell used stuff?
Oh
I
yeah, all
mean,
the time. Yeah.
really? Wow.
Yeah, some of them are reissues, some of them are originals, it was kind of like a mixed bag, but a huge Current 93 fan like sold me a
Oh,
bunch of
really?
his records. Yeah. So I've been going through those.
He's a very funny guy.
Yeah.
He's
Tibet.
very, very. I haven't been in touch with him a while. I mean, we still in touch occasionally by mail, but there was a period when I was in England a lot. I would
Hmm.
see him. Sometimes he didn't. I think I stayed at his place a couple times too.
Yeah.
He's a funny guy. Very, very funny.
Hmm.
Very sharp witted. Turned me on to some good stuff. Uh,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have known about T2 or Jan Dukes de Grey if it wasn't for him. He turned me on to those.
Yeah. All
Which
that kind of stuff. I know. It's funny when he like shows up in the, what is it? The Shirley Collins documentary. It's great.
yeah, yeah. I remember times where I was at his house where he'd be like on the phone with Shirley.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah, very interesting guy. Very, very funny.
Yeah.
Super fun. He one time tried to make me watch Bridget Jones' Diary with him. That was a step too far for me.
Wow. You're like, I can't go there, man. I can't do
Oh, sorry.
it.
Very nice guy.
uh,
Always enjoyed my time with him.
yeah.
Yeah. Wild.
Yeah.
Man.
All right, man.
Well, thank you. I hope there was something usable.
That's great.
I know I was supposed to be selling records for you, but
No, you're not. I already sent the records out to like the subscribers and all that stuff. So this is just for fun.
Oh, okay, good.
we can talk and
I think it's out of print now. I think
is
it's
it?
gone.
Yeah.
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 I mean, I don't know how many they made, but
I mean, I think I took about 70 copies, so that's a
Jesus,
chunk right there.
really?
Yeah. So I sent out about 70 copies of it.
Oh, that's a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah. I have like, so I do this vinyl subscription and
Yeah.
that's about how many subscribers I have right now. So it's fun. I get to send them, weird music every month. So
Is that,
great.
are they mostly in the States?
Yeah, pretty much all US folks. There's
Mhm.
a few international people, but yeah, because the shipping's so expensive. But um, yeah, it's fun. It gives me a chance to like, pick some stuff from the things that I really like, and send those
I
out.
really enjoyed the Plux Cuba talk.
Yeah, you with Raphael. Yeah, that was great. Great to talk to him.
I knew I didn't know enough about how that was made to
Yeah,
last 4 minutes.
yeah.
Yeah, that was
It's still mysterious. You know what I mean? Like, but it
great.
was great to talk to him about it.
Yeah, it's really kind of real lightning in the bottle thing.
Yeah, that record is something else. Um, I actually just listened to it the other day. Had a,
There's another record on that label that's really worth finding out. Uh,
Oh, I
by
think we talked about this in when we emailed about it. What's his face? I can't remember his name.
White with the red lettering.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Can't remember the
Henry
guy's name.
Henry Henry Waska is on it.
Yeah,
Sort of a slight computer music adjacent guy.
yeah.
Kind of Irida era
Hmm.
type. He's on it. I remember that, but I forget the guy's name. But that record's quite good. That record's quite
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
And
I
maybe
think
it's that expensive now. I don't think that's ever had the sort of like cult cachet that
right,
the Flux Cuba record got.
right, right. Yeah, I need to track that one down.
Yeah, it's probably
Um,
not that. It's probably, it might even be on Bandcamp now.
yeah, everything's on Bandcamp or YouTube or whatever. So
Yeah, that's a
yeah,
good record. I still
yeah,
have it. No, it's good.
yeah. You haven't gotten rid of it yet.
But if
All
I
right.
still have it by now, it's good.
Yeah, it's stood the test of time. Um, but yeah, thanks for your time, Jim. I really appreciate it. And
You
yeah,
and I hope you
nice
have a great evening.
to connect with you. Yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah,
relax here, and yeah, I hope to make it back to Japan at some point too. So
let me know. I mean, I
yeah,
can help. It's
yeah,
tough.
I
You'll
know,
have to
I
be
know.
patient, but it's a good vacation.
Yeah, that's I want to go mostly just to be there and maybe play a show or two. I don't care about playing shows that much.
You can pay for dinner and maybe two dinners by doing a
Yeah,
show.
exactly. That's all I need.
But it is a good vacation, at least.
Yeah, I love it there, and I miss it. And I wanna go back. So hopefully in the
Well, let
next
me
few
know
years.
because I'm not totally have my finger on the pulse, but I know who to talk to, etc.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, Great. Well, maybe we'll see you then. That'd be great.
Okay,
All right,
okay.
man.
Thanks again.
Yeah,
Okay,
have a good
have
day.
a great evening.
Yeah,
Take
take
care.
care. Bye bye.
Bye.